Hello and welcome to Man's Model Moments Midweek Model Meet. I just ate a piece of chocolate just at the wrong time there. But anyway, enough of that. Hello, everybody. So let me have a quick look here. So a couple of things. Obviously, you've noticed my acoustic foam is no longer on the back. It's just fallen off. For some reason, well, it's not for some reason, it's because it's foam. Doesn't stick very well, so I'm going to have to put some like PVA or something to just soak into the cells of it a little bit to get that there. So, hey ho. Anyway, enough of my wittering. Let's see, we got David Markey. Good evening. Modeling with Mike. Good to see you. We've got Adrian Hook. Go for it painting. The Little Things Junkie. Good to see all of you. Stuart. Edward Williams. World War II scale models. Dave. Good evening. Oh, I've lost my place. Ian Ellison. John Christmas. I've got Phil. Keith. Howard Kendrick, Graham McRobert. I'm trying not to repeat myself, but I'll apologise if I do. I'd rather do that than miss people out. We've got Mystery Box Nick. I can get my teeth in now. Got Craig. Hi, Craig. Good to see you. Julian Hall. Antoine A. Good evening. Dor. Some interesting names. I hope there's no mysterious clues tonight. Like, oh, there's a bit of a. Oh God, I can't even think. I woke up. I did one of those. I'll just have a little snooze. Things. Got home from the shop, and we played a bit of Civilization, Maria and I, and then had the fire on, and it was nice and cozy. So yeah, had a bit of a snooze, and it's like I woke up about 10 minutes before due to come on, and just like, oh God, I need to wake up. So Jack the modeler, Danny Gabe, and I think that almost brings us up to the present. Andy Freeman, Dave Fairclough, George Davis, ACF Nugget, try grip fill. Yeah. I just want to get. You just need something to just make the surface of the foam flat, effectively, to actually sort of go into it. I think grip fill is a bit overkill. It's a bit sledgehammer to crack a walnut. I think some PVA will be fine. Go for it painting. I think I've already mentioned. Julian By, Dominique. Good to see you. Darcy Actual. And I think we are pretty much there. Apologies if I've missed anybody. Mark F. And that brings us to the present. So, good evening, everybody. Welcome. So, I don't have, well, I do have some talking points, if you like, tonight. Not on a particular topic as such, but obviously over the past almost 2 months now, since Christmas. I guess since Christmas kind of has been 2 months. Been a lot of changes for myself. Obviously moving here, all the delays with the house move, the decision to, well, not a decision. So with the move, I also had to move a lot of stuff to the shop as a kind of interim holding sort of position. And then that kind of impacted the shop, which kind of destroyed my December business and January business. And obviously I had to sort that, but because of the delays, I also thought I would then make some changes to the shop. And that was a lot more than perhaps I thought it would be. So now we're moved, obviously. We've been here for 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks, 3 weeks on Thursday, on Friday. And settled down, I would say, over the past week. Oh, and in addition to all of that, Maria picked up something probably from work and then gave it to me, and that took me out for about a week. And apparently everybody's been getting it. And it's one of those myriad of viruses that comes at this time of year. I mean, they're around all the time, but they seem to spread more, I guess, because people have been away. They've been mixing with family members that they perhaps haven't seen, and then they go back to work with people that they haven't seen. It's just, people are great viral vectors. They spread diseases everywhere. And it was just really draining. So having the shop open this week, I did see a couple of people, and they've had similar things, and they said the same thing, just really draining. So one of the things I wanted to do remodeling the shop was basically the counter. So if anybody has been to the shop in chat, you'll know. World War II model Dave has been to the shop, so we all know this, but there's kind of an angled counter. That's gone now. I have videos all of this, so I will put a video out hopefully tomorrow, sort of showing you the progress of that and what it looks like now. So that's gone, which meant I could extend around where I used to do some of the unboxing shooting, and then just go round into the corner for what used to be the office as now my counter and everything. So so doing all of that, lost my train of thought there, was delayed or took a lot longer because of having the virus, which of course then impacts everything else. So one of the first things I want to do, because I know Adrian's in, a couple of other people, is apologise to everybody who's had delays on orders through the shop, because and thank everybody for their patience, because it's not my intention to delay anything. It's always my intention, and now that the shop is basically going to be open 6 days a week, I should be able to get a 24-hour turnaround on everything. That hasn't been the case by a long shot in a lot of cases. So my apologies to everybody that's been impacted by that and has had delays on orders. Everything not quite is up to current spec. There's a couple of orders which have come in this week, where things have been delayed a bit, basically because they've got out of stock. But everybody should have their orders by the weekend. Adrian, you are one of the people affected by my unfortunate. So I had a big rewind a bit. I had a big stack of boxes to go, and the Royal Mail guy, quite a young guy. I've not seen him before. He must be a new guy in the area. Came in with a big. They print your labels and bring them with you. Bring them with them, and putting all the labels on and handing them over. And then he's like, "Oh, we're one short," and I'm just like, "Well, that's all the labels you brought." And it's like, "Oh, so they didn't print one of the labels, and unfortunately, it was yours." So. Most of all gone. There's 2 which will be going out tomorrow, and they're all 24 hours. So everybody should have everything by the weekend. If you don't, and you've got an order outstanding with me, get in touch via the email. The email is the best way to get through at the shop at the moment, and I'll get that sorted out. So that's the first thing I wanted to cover is that part. Now, this week has been the first week the shop has been open since in 2025. So obviously now have the Games Workshop stuff. I've just started putting things on the website there, and that'll take a while. I've got a whole load of stock that needs to go on the website, which currently isn't. And then I need to get to things like the secondhand stuff that'll go on last. But computer is now set up there. I'm very happy with the way the layout of the shop is now. It's got quite a bit more room, and basically, again, people who have been to the shop or have seen it online, there is a little step about 2/3 of the way down the shop that used to have the old bookmaker's counter and kind of glass screen, because obviously they were dealing cash, being bookies, so it was quite secure. And that step, everything up to that step is now kits. So before there used to be a mix right down the center aisle on one side, it was a lot of tools and paints and things. Now it's just kits. So all of that is just injection molded kits. And then you go up the step, and then you've got the kind of L shape, which goes around the counter. And that is where all the paints, accessories, tools and stuff are. So, and secondhand kits. Makes a lot more sense. So it's kind of one way now as well, which is an old retail trick to mean that you have to walk past things to get to certain other things. So I'm really happy with all of that. I'm open now 6 days a week. So from 10 in the morning till 5:30 in the evening. I've got a half an hour for break for lunch, so which I can just pop back here and get myself something. So with that, it's a lot easier to keep on top of stock, on top of the website, all of that side of things. So I'm happy to be in that position. Now I'm just getting that stage of setting up. So I've still got my camera set up there, so I can do a lot of the sort of the base filming that I used to do, and some editing now as well, because I've changed the PC. Basically, I had Maria's old laptop, which is fine for doing web stuff, but couldn't edit videos. It didn't have the power. And now I'll be able to actually, now I've got a PC there rather than a laptop, I'll be able to do a bit of editing there too. So the big changes for you guys out there is obviously website in terms of the content of the shop and the throughput, their response on chat and everything, because I'll be around. Massive improvements. I'm going to be open a lot more, and obviously with the channel, it means I've got a lot more time to actually be able to just dedicate to making videos. So the changes are good ones. It's been, as everybody watching will probably already know, a pretty rocky road over the past couple of months to get to this point. But I mean, Maria and I were talking about it sort of over the last couple of days, weekend. I think we are both much happier here. Yes, the house isn't worth as much as the old one. It's not the chocolate box kind of cottage experience. But that didn't actually really fit either as that well. I mean, it was lovely. The old house was lovely. But this house is, it's still solid. Now, this was made in the 30s, so when people actually did care about construction, not so much when it went off, after the war, when it was just a lot of it was just thrown up. I won't tell you what my father used to think about modern houses either. He was a plumber, and he wasn't very appreciative of, as he said, walls made of cardboard, because you couldn't find a joist to actually hang a radiator on, in his opinion. Plus, of course, he used to solder pipes with a blowtorch, and cardboard filling in walls and blowtorches don't go together that well. So that's the main changes that I wanted to kind of put out there. A lot of you will kind of know some of that already, but I thought it was worth kind of putting as a more formal announcement, if that makes any sense. So obviously I've got the 25 kits in 2025 to get through. As far as you guys out in, the other side of YouTube, as it were, the public face of YouTube, I haven't got one yet. Now, behind the scenes, obviously here, I have. I've not completed any kits. No, that's not true. I've got one under my belt, and I've got another one which is 90% there, and a couple more on the go as well. So I'm actually not too far behind in terms of pacing, but obviously I need to ramp that up a lot in the next couple of months to get the videos out, and for you to actually be able to see the evidence of 25. It's no good me just saying, oh yeah, I did 25 kits, didn't you notice? That wasn't the intent, obviously. I have all of the 12 days of Modelmas, which I want to get that out of the way, because I don't want that to become a yearly, as in lasting an entire year thing. So I'll probably do the draw for that next Wednesday. So beginning of March, that'll be roughly, what is the date next Wednesday? It's not going to be March, is it? It's going to be 26th of February. So 26th is probably when I will do that draw. So obviously I will put a community post out and make everybody aware, especially through the members channel on Discord, etc. I think I've got 2 more to put out in that for people to actually come in. And of course the main one is the 3D printer. I'm still not actually sure where that box is. So it's not that I've been delaying it for that. It's just I really literally have no idea what the box is. But I've got an idea. I think it's one of the ones in the garage. So there may be a slight delay in sending that out. But I got all of those put to one side. And I just kind of need a couple of concrete ideas. I've got kind of indications of what the last couple are going to be. I just need to firm that up and obviously put that out. So yeah, I mean, Maria and I were talking about how actually we're much happier in this house. Obviously, the financial piece is a big part of it. The lack of that financial pressure kind of hanging over us is a big one, because that no longer has that sway, which is a great feeling. And obviously I have this room, which I didn't have in the old place. Now, I had my man cave, the garage, but I have a man cave here as well. It's not sorted out yet, but then my old one had got to a state where I couldn't really use it that well. And I couldn't use it in the winter. It was too cold out there, even though it was insulated. And yes, you can put the heater on. It still was too cold to sit out there for a long time. I didn't have a computer based out there. Yes, I could take the laptop, but the laptop wasn't really powerful, especially with StreamYard's changes to its requirements. StreamYard is quite a CPU intense program, actually, for a streaming service. So here I've got effectively, I mean, this is a conservatory. I hesitate to call it a studio because that sounds a bit poncy. But but this is my studio. Okay, this room is just going to be used for building, recording, and streaming. So it doesn't have any other function. It's a state at the moment, but it's kind of a state that you can see how it's going to be. I mean, at the moment, it's got a huge, one of our largest moving boxes, which is containing all of the other moving boxes that we've unpacked so far. So obviously that won't be there for that much longer, and we can eventually get it all out into the recycling. It's got another box, which is just the plastic packing boxes, which will get reused for other things, obviously. It's got other bits, which are in transition, like all these bloody foam acoustic panels, for instance. But they're all in the right place, and you can see how they're going to get to that end state. So that is, again, from my side, it's a big part of getting the, if you like, the production line of the channel, of the content of the channel, pretty well there. Likewise, having the computer at the shop and having the ability to edit videos there as well when it's a bit quieter, again, is a big one, because it means I don't have any dead time. So it's not like I'm at the shop twiddling my thumbs when, I mean, there's a lot to do at the shop before I get to the state of just twiddling my thumbs, but it just means that I don't ever have that possibility of dead time. Which sounds a silly thing to say, because a lot of people, I'm sure, will be like, oh, it must be great to just, have some downtime. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, because, yeah, I mean, there's always the option to, like, not do that. But that's it. It's having the option, right? So there's a few comments been in the chat as I've been talking. So I'm going to pause there a second to just have a little bit of a look back up. Yeah, Adrian, Royal Mail. Yeah, it was, honestly, I was just like, again, it's in terms of and I mentioned this in one of the videos, that the pressures that you put on yourself as a creator, somebody making YouTube videos, as an owner of a business, you do put on certain pressures on yourself. For me, every parcel that doesn't go out to a customer that's sitting there is like a weight, adding. And the ability to clear all that off is a great feeling, right? And keep current and make sure that you're supplying customers as you would wish. In the same way as putting videos out, that's the same thing. If I've got all these videos in my mind or in progress, and they all, until they are finished, feel like a little lead weight hanging off you. And once you actually get it on and publish it, that's gone. That was kind of, it's like inflating a balloon and letting it go. That weight is lifted. So anything that stops that is a pain in the ass, right? And the Royal Mail is, a lot of people diss the Royal Mail, but I have to say, compared to a lot of other services out there, they're not that bad. No, that doesn't sound like a glowing endorsement, but the individuals that work, that come to the shop and collect parcels and stuff, have all been great. Yeah. And I'm sure, like a lot of organizations, a lot of individuals, most of the individuals that work there want to do a good job, but I think it's a lot of the systems that fail them. Unlike having, 7 out of 8 labels, that's great, but it's not 8 out of 8 labels, which is really what you need the system to be able to supply. So, especially when you've got 8 on your device, you would have thought, and of course they can't think of every single one they go to, like, oh, hang on a minute, I've got 7 labels, and I've only got 7 labels, but I've got 8 things it says I've got to pick up. There's not the 2 + 2 = 4 for every single address. But of course, I notice it because for me, I don't care about anybody else. Of how many addresses they've been to before and it's been perfect. I care when it's not perfect, when it gets to me, just like everybody else feels exactly the same way. So, I mean, the Royal Mail, there have been a couple of instances. you have to look at the bulk of it, because I've sent out a lot of parcels, and actually, the failure rate of the actual parcels been sent out has been fairly low. It's not been zero, which would be ideal, obviously, but it's been pretty low, and most of the time, there's been one occasion where it was actually delivered, and then that was delivered to a bin, and then one which was basically just lost. I have had them go and then come back and then done whatever with them, regardless. Depends what the customer wants to do. But generally, Royal Mail, it's like 98, 99% there. I'm not sure that other services, is every better? I don't think so. DPD, UPS, they might have the same sort of, overall rates, but they're more expensive. So for my purposes, which is being able to send tracked parcels with proof of delivery, they're at the moment they're the top of the pile. They're not perfect though, but I can't really diss them. Their online portal is okay. It can be a bit cranky, but then so can others. So, you would have thought it would be a bit more advanced in 2025, but hey. Modeling Mike, congrats, Alex. Glad to hear the mayhem is over. Yeah, no, thank you. It's amazing, and it's well worth saying actually how peace of mind is worth everything, really. I liked Farthings, the house we were in before, but it didn't give me peace of mind. This place, objectively, if you just took the house, it's not as nice a house. It's not quite as big, the bathroom basically, but then you got to look at what value you're getting out of that. We had a big bathroom in Farthings, but neither of us have baths. We both take showers. It had a toilet and a bidet. We never actually got the waste on the bidet plumbed in, so only one of those things I've used. We had a load of storage. That's the only thing really. We had a load of cupboard storage, but because it had sloped roofs, so it was like this shape in cross section. That's all you could do with that space really, because you couldn't have done anything else with it because it's limited headroom. So the bathroom here is basically a rectangle. It's got a bath with a shower on it, which we're going to change. We just put a shower in because, again, neither of us have baths. I did actually use it for a bath when we moved because, oh my God, I needed to soak after moving, just the muscles, But that's kind of what you need, right? It's a toilet, a sink, and a bath or a shower, and it's got those. We'll put some storage in, and just be a bit more efficient with how we deal with things. So the old house had a walk-in wardrobe for Maria. We don't have that here, but we've got big alcoves in the bedroom, which we can convert into storage places for all of basically Maria's clothes. So, we had a downstairs toilet. We don't have one here. It occasionally got used, So the bits that we don't have here were not essential. The kitchen here is actually better than the one there. It's actually slightly larger, more usable. So, you have to look at what is a house or what is anything. And I think this applies to modeling too, right? What is it doing for you? You can have all the tools, all the gadgets in the world for modeling. And it's like, what's his golf analogy? You can have all of the best clubs in the world. It doesn't make you a better golfer. Time, practice, effort make you a better golfer. Having the tools, the right tools, might save you some time, might make some things easier, but they don't change the basic skills and practice. And it's the same with, with the house. We had a big dining room. We never used it. We literally, I think in the time we were in that house, we used it perhaps 4 times. That's less than once a year. So, here, the equivalent room is this, the conservatory, which Maria hates conservatories, so it would never be used for that. So it's my studio. So I've gained a studio that I didn't have before. I couldn't have used the dining room in the other house. Those of you who have watched the channel for a long time will have seen I did use it a few times, but I was set up there temporarily because it was a thoroughfare. It was the only way for you to get from the kitchen to the lounge through the dining room. So you couldn't actually use it as a dedicated anything. So the lounge, in fact, it's probably about the same size in gross area, but the one here is much more usable because the one in Farthing was a really odd shape. It had stairs going up to upstairs. Obviously going up to upstairs. I suppose it could be going downstairs, but I didn't have a cellar. On one wall, which is the same wall as the fireplace, and the same wall that the entry to the dining room was. So one wall was completely unusable. The next wall had both windows on. Then there was one solid wall, which was the one that was basically the intersection between the 2 houses. And then the rear wall had the entrance to the rear garden on, and was where the stairs were. So there was limited usable kind of wall space as well. So here it's much simpler in layout, much easier to actually use the space we have. So it's a lot more efficient in that respect. So again, all of that boils down to a more practical living space that we have here. And I've tried to do the same with the shop in terms of extending. If you're hearing any pattering, by the way, that's the one disadvantage of having a conservatory. I mean, you get to experience the same weather that I am, I guess. So is it a disadvantage? I don't know. But anyway, yeah, being able to sort of extend back in the shop gives me a lot more usable space, and enabled me to actually kind of think about what's the customer's experience of the shop, and kind of what are people looking for, and where are the best areas, I guess, to put things for customers. So hopefully it all works out. And if anybody in the chat wants to come into the shop, I know some of you guys are overseas and stuff, or away in the country, it's a bit more difficult, but always love to see people. People have come in, who've watched the channel, including from overseas, remarkably. And it's always a pleasure to talk to people, that have come to the shop from watching the videos. I did get my first Warhammer sale today, so that was something. Some Agrodon Lancers, I believe, which were remarkably expensive for what they are, which is something I think we've talked about in airfix and chill before. But yeah, I think the peace of mind element is something that it's easy for people to overlook, especially in today's world where I'm kind of always thinking about the next thing rather than just actually being settled and being happy in yourself and content. It is really, really valuable. And somebody mentioned it on I think the first Midweek Model Meet I did here a couple of weeks ago, about how I looked happier, less stressed, and that's absolutely the case. I think when you're happier, it allows you to focus more. It allows you to, because you're more content. I think less things become issues. It's easier to deal with stuff. I think when you get a lot of pressure from a lot of different things, it mounts up and becomes too much, right? And then you tend to start doing diversion activity or just melting down or whatever. I'm not saying that I was melting down, but you know what I mean? It's difficult to organize responses to things when you're in that kind of headspace. So the good news is I'm not. So it should be a lot easier to deal with stuff. Okay, I mean, yeah, here we go. Howard puts it much more eloquently there than I have. Quality of life is a better measure of wealth. Like you, I'm an ex-scientist, a minimum wage now, but I have a ton of time. Yeah. So I've always said money doesn't make you happy. It makes it easier. It can ease some of those other factors for sure. If somebody gave me £1 million now, it would make things a lot easier because I wouldn't have to think about bills and I don't know what happens if there's a flood, or I'd be able to do other things with the shop that I wanted to do. But that wouldn't make you happy. That just relieves some of the things that make you unhappy. But most people have to do a lot of work to get that money. Squeeze that. And a lot of the things that you do for work and everything else makes you unhappy. So yeah, stepping back from a leadership role. I say I was senior leadership in not senior leadership, mid-level leadership in fairly large companies. Puts a lot of responsibility and a lot of pressure and a lot of requirements on you. So I had to do a lot of travel, a lot of international travel. That has knock-on impacts. You're not spending a lot of time with your family. That was a contributing factor to my divorce for sure, because your headspace then again is focused on other things than really the things that do make you happy. And a family should be one of those things that makes you happy. So yeah, having the absence of those factors is something I think that a lot of people don't value as much as they should do today. I'm sure that's always been the case, but Graham McRobert has a question. Gremlin, a question here. Is it possible to resin print a 1/16 scale SAS figure? It absolutely is possible to do such a thing, Graham. If you can find an STL file of the subject you want, essentially as long as it's detailed enough, you can print it in whatever scale you want. So one of the things I did, it was going to be a buddy build actually with John Alec, he was on the in the chat. And John, if you want to pop in, the normal link is valid. I kind of got distracted with a whole load of stuff at the time, but it was a 2001 kind of buddy build, and he did his moon buggy, which if you've not seen it, go and check that out. That's a nice little build. I'm saying nice little build. It's not that little, but I did a one of the astronauts, Dave. I was going to do it as. Now it wasn't quite 1/6 scale because obviously that's about 30 centimeters. It was more like 23, maybe. So probably like 1/8 scale. But really, you're only limited by the printer, and I could have probably done it in 1/6. I think my printer would have probably accommodated that. I didn't want to print it that big, so as long as you get the file you're happy with, and it's of sufficient resolution for you to be able to print it out, so it doesn't look weird or janky in that kind of scale, then the only limitation is the printer itself. And if you can break it down, if it comes in different pieces, then that makes it a lot easier as well. I just printed the thing in one piece. But, okay, let me have a look again. See where we are. Yeah, so Nick, Royal Mail is the best of the other services. Yeah. The problem with, I think, Royal Mail is it's not owned. I mean, it's a name, right? I don't know who owns it now, actually. used to be DHL, and it's different from the post office counters. So there's no relationship between them. So actually, and that's actually a problem, right, for businesses. Not so much for, I think, the paying public, but for a business, if I want to, so I could print all my own labels, right? Because a lot of you might be out there thinking, Alex, you lazy bastard, why are you waiting for Royal Mail to come pick up your parcels? Just print the labels, stick them on, take them to the post office. If I do that, it costs me 50 pence, I think it's 50 pence per parcel extra, because I printed the labels. That's fine. I'm not counting that cost at all. Or cost of the paper, that's a few pence per parcel, if that. But because the post office counters is a separate entity, they charge you for basically handling the parcel and passing it on to the Royal Mail. So it's a handling fee, effectively. So yeah, it's it's odd, because everybody thinks Royal Mail, post office, the same thing. They're not. So if I actually did that, I could go down to the post office and drop them off, and it would cost me like an extra, what today, £3.50, which doesn't sound much. But if I pass that on to customers, it's another 50 pence on every single parcel. It also means I've got to physically go down to the shop, which isn't actually a problem, but it's just another process. And if you've got a hard day, I had a hard day, I've got 10 parcels to post. I'm like, oh, Jesus, I've got a load of stuff in the car. I can't do it today. I'll do it tomorrow. Then that's another day delay for people. Now, in Shaftesbury, there is so it's called Click and Drop, the service from Royal Mail. So basically, you can print your labels. And what I used to do when I was still in Shaftesbury is I print the label, put it on the parcel, take it home, and then the next morning, before 10 o'clock, so I could get up, a reasonable time, get up at 8 or whatever with Maria. I'd drive to the what are they, collection centres, I think they're called, basically the delivery office, and then just hand all those parcels, and they would take them and then send them off. No charge, because it's the same organisation there. Now, there isn't a collection office, I don't think, in Wincanton, so I can't do that for the business. So, again, but there's also a little box that you can tick to arrange a delivery, which is next day. So, and they'll bring your labels with you most of the time. So it's not ideal. Ideally, they'd be the same organisation, and I could print the labels, myself, stick them in a parcel, and then take them down to the post office, and then I'd be done with it. And then, that's great. They go out the same day. As it is, they have to go out the next day, because they have to be booked for the guys to come and collect them and bring the labels with them. So the Royal Mail are not as bad as others, dabbing with faint praise. Yes, indeed. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's like they're not as bad as others, and we're kind of judging things by how bad they are, not how good they are, which is a bit like a lot of things. Well, Hollywood movies, for instance. So before Christmas, Maria and I, there really wasn't much to watch, right? And we got into a habit of rewatching older films. So we watched The Matrix, Matrix Reloaded. We watched Die Hard. I watched Die Hard at Christmas. We watched Blade, the Blade trilogy, and watched all of those. And yeah, I mean, Blade, I think Blade 2 or was it Blade 3, sort of fairly janky CGI because it was in its infancy. But glossing over that, the story and the acting and everything is super solid. Yeah, really enjoyable films. Good 8, 9, out of 10. We watch a film, we watch some, see something and oh, we'll try this. And it's just like now our main rating is want to see it shit. No, it's like, watch a film and like, yeah, that was a solid 5.5, and that now is our good, because it wasn't shit. That's not a good scale to be measuring things on, measuring stuff by how bad it is rather than how good it is. But anyway, it's a bit like with Netflix. We tend to watch Netflix series which aren't American or UK made, because they tend to be better. They tend to focus a little bit more on story, on character development, character arcs, rather than some other bullshit, which I'm not interested in. I just want to see a good film. We've actually watched quite a few recently. We watched the Ari Murders, which is a Swedish small series on Netflix. That was pretty good. We watched a really good animated series, which, Maria does not do animated stuff, right? Called, oh God, what was it? Scavenger's Reign. That's what it is. I think it's 12 episodes about the survivors of a space freighter who have to survive on an alien world. And that was really good. I really recommend that if you're a sci-fi fan. That's really good. But yeah, generally there was a South Korean series. North Korean series would be not as good, I feel. A South Korean series. Oh God, I can't remember what it was. About these demons that drag people to hell. You get judged, and then these demons drag you to hell. That was its second season. That's pretty good. Squid Game, obviously, watched. So yeah, we tend to judge now series like, is that American or British? If it's not, then we'll probably watch it. If it is, it's like, yeah. Is this just going to be ticking a load of boxes, before they hired writers or cast writers, or so there's always that big caveat, and we have started watching some things and just like, nah, this is just not great writing. Those are very kind words, Frank. Thank you very much. Good to have you here. Frank also says, I've had far worse service from the Royal Mail than DPD, Every, and others combined. Royal Mail is useless these days, and the track is totally pointless. Yeah, you see, that's the other thing. I think is a lot of people's experience is highly variable. I've had very poor service from Every, or Hermes as they used to be. Changing the name of your service because you're so bad, I think, is not a good look. DPD, I've only had deliveries from DPD. I've never used them to deliver. I must say DPD are pretty good. And shout out to my local DPD driver, a guy called Chris. He delivers most of my parcels. I got a Creative Models delivery today from at the shop from Chris. Delivered it. He actually delivered. God, what was it? It's like I think it was a cable or something. Some trivial thing I ordered from Amazon, and to this house. And I opened the door. And it was Chris, and he was just like, "Oh," just like, "Oh yeah, we live here now," because he's used to seeing me in the shop, not my home. But DPD, I've only experienced from the delivery side. And from the delivery side, they're really good. I'm not using them because actually, I think probably because they're expensive, and for a small business, I would have to, pass that on to customers, because otherwise it would wipe out my profit, which would just make the whole business untenable. So yeah, it's difficult because you've got to find that balancing point. Because I could go cheaper, so I could send parcels cheaper than I currently do, but saving £1 or 50p on postage and introducing the question mark of, is this actually going to be delivered, to me is not worth it. So So quite a bit of discussion about. So Frank, yes, it's displaying out my viewers suck in Braille. Well, if it is, it's completely coincidental, and if anybody, well, nobody's going to be watching and in Braille, are they? That's kind of counterintuitive. So I keep noticing I've got one little hair just there in my moustache, which is slightly longer and unfortunately white, and it keeps catching the light, and I keep noticing it. So apologies. Should have trimmed before I came on air. No, they are. So basically, they're these, and these are sticky Velcro. So the thing is, it doesn't stick very well to foam. So at the beginning of the stream, I mentioned, so they're supposed to stick like that, and they do, but they don't support their own weight. So rather, the Velcro is really strong. Unfortunately, the Velcro, all of these are sticky because the Velcro is still stuck on. So no, they're Velcro squares. Hopefully, by next stream, I should have got a solution to that. But in terms of priorities, it's down there a bit. So. Just some other comments on various delivery services. And a few people were talking about happiness. Yeah. Learning to be a counsellor is a very noble profession. Is that the right word? Calling? Because it's one of those things I think you need a lot of empathy without. There's a difference between empathy and sympathy. Can't remember which way around it is, because you have to be sympathetic and empathic. You know, you have to understand people's problems without being drawn into them, which I think is difficult. I think it's tough to be a counsellor because you have to care without caring too much, because otherwise you become drawn in and then you become useless as a counsellor. So it's I wish you all the best with that. But yeah, I mean, looking at things holistically, I think takes a long time for most people to do. I mean, because our society isn't really geared up for that. Our society, I mean, most capitalist societies at least, kind of push you into the next thing. Companies obviously want you to have, this is the best, that is the best. You know, this will buy you happiness, and you can't, as Julian says. You know, can't buy happiness. Can buy things that make you happy or ease the factors making you unhappy. So it is one of those things that it helps. Money for sure helps, but it is that sort of pursuit of money. Like the Bible said, the love of money is the root of all evil. People always say, money's evil. No, the love of money is that desire. That's the point that the old biblical scriptures were trying to make. Bill says he stepped back from work 18 months ago to become a foster carer to our 4-year-old grandson. Best thing I did. That is certainly noble. Having had 3 4-year-olds in the past, not all at the same time, thank God. 4 is a special age. Very rewarding, but you need to put a lot in. They can be. And what is it with toddlers? The amount of energy they have. Good God. And then they'll just stop. Hey, Moss, good to see you. Fair few people have been popping in and out as I've been garbling away. So yes, Moss has had experience of Royal Mail as well. Guarantees sod all. Yeah, I mean, I think that's true of a lot of the services. Yeah, track 24. So I send. So basically, I have two levels of postage at the moment. Basically, I'm going to try, this is not a dedicated promise, but it is an intent, I'll give you my intent, right, to change my postage once I've, again, it's kind of on the priority list, but it's after getting everything on the website and all that kind of stuff, is try to change it. You can actually ship by weight. Now, it's an odd one because obviously you've got weight and volume to deal with shipping stuff. But for instance, the model stand, the adjustable model stand, the painting and assembly stand that I sell, will fit, and I do have a large letter box to send that in. So if I can actually get it so that if you're just buying one of those and want to, you know, and I can post it out with large letter and save people money, you know, I'd rather do that than, you know, charge standard postage. Mostly people buy it with other things, so it's kind of a moot point. But if I can get that sorted, that would be great. But my main two services at the moment are you either pay for it or it's free over £75. So it's free over £75. I send Royal Mail Track 48, and pay for it is Royal Mail Track 24. But as Moss said, that doesn't mean next day. It's, again, they say it's an intent. So yeah, I've had parcels sent out Track 24, which have arrived after parcels that I've sent out Track 48. So it's kind of like, it's a bit like German recycling, where they have this big truck, you separate out all of your recycling into different things, and then just chuck it all in the back of the same thing. It's like, well, what was the fucking point of that? So, yeah, indeed, I've got a well, it's a click and drop, yeah, so it's business account. So post office shuts at 2 p.m, but the cutoff for dropping off post is 1 p.m. I have to go Master Sparks post office and cut. You see, again, because Royal Mail and post office are two different things. I drop off do the click and drop, which is the service I use, and then I drop off at a sorting office. If I drop off, which was fine in Shaftesbury because there was one right there, so I could get up, go to the sorting office, drop all that stuff off, and then go to the shop. That's all fine. Here there isn't, so I can't do that. So I have to rely on them coming to me, or drop off at the post office. But the thing is, now I'm open till 5:30. They'll be closed anyway. If I use and like when I used to use the collection office, I'm sure they call it collection office, right? At Shaftesbury, they only open till 10 a.m. in the morning. So your window is 8 till 10 in the morning. So that's why it was always the day after. So I'd print all the stuff, take it home. Or actually, I would take the parcels home, print the labels off at home, stick them on, and then in the morning, next day, I would go drop it off because you have to be there before 10 a.m, which is fine because I was opening at 11 in the shop. So that kind of worked. But it does require you to get a lot of ducks in a row. And if you forget something, that's it. You have to wait for another day. So yeah, none of these are ideal solutions. But small businesses are they're not geared up. These companies are not geared up to deal with small businesses. You know, there's a lot of small businesses, and we generate a lot of business for these kind of companies, but they're not where those businesses are focused. Those businesses are focused on trying to get big accounts. You know, they want big money. So, well, yeah, the Royal Warrant needs to be stripped off the Royal Mail now. It is just a name, really. But, you know. Modeling Mike became a YouTube member. Thank you very much, Mike. That is much appreciated. I'll have a couple of other things that I wanted to talk about in terms of changes on the channel, and it mainly goes to the live side of things. But one of the things is that I'll be setting up the Sunday members only stream as a regular thing. I don't know what else to call it. So Modeling with Mike, if you go to the community page of YouTube, there is a pinned message, post, whatever you want to call it, that has the Discord link for the members Discord. Go over and click that. If it does expire, I may need to renew it actually. If you do find that it has expired, pop me an email on the channel email and I'll just refresh that just to make sure that you can get in there. Yeah, and this is it, right? We've had people say that Royal Mail are actually shocking. They've had terrible experiences. You've been using Royal Mail for business for many years, no problems. I don't know how big your business is, Little Things Junkie. So again, it depends where they want to focus, right? So where is the support? So I have to say, dealing with Games Workshop, I heard a load of really negative things about Games Workshop, about what they require from you, about how they're a nightmare to deal with, blah, 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 right? My discussions with them before Christmas, before I became an independent seller of them, were all pretty good. And I was very guarded because of a lot of that kind of rumor. And Games Workshop are a massive company, right? £1 billion company. They actually have been really good, really good. So the discounts I get from them, comparable to, actually slightly better than some suppliers. I have a dedicated trade rep who speaks to me every single week. We did a stock check today, which was very easy because I've only been selling Warhammer for like 3 days in the shop. I've sold one thing. But, you know, they've got a dedicated trade portal, so you can get all the images and stuff, the barcodes on their price list and everything. They're very transparent. They will ship. So, for instance, I've sold one thing. Unfortunately, it's out of stock, right, at Games Workshop temporarily. If it wasn't, right, that one thing, one box, what they do is, so they have their finger really on the pulse. So anything you sell in a week, they reorder and send to you. It doesn't matter if that's just one thing, they will send it to you. They don't charge for postage. They don't charge business postage at all. None of my other suppliers do that. They all require a minimum threshold. It's usually £250 to £300 before you get free postage as a trade business. Games Workshop, no, nothing. If you're missing something, they send it to you. That's it, done. They give you a marketing budget. Get that? So their small business support is phenomenal. Now, obviously, I'm very new with Games Workshop, but of all the suppliers that I've dealt with so far, they are the most impressive by a long run. Maybe that's because they're a $1 billion business and can afford to do it, but I'm tiny, right? I'm tiny for them. I'm also tiny for Airfix and for Creative and the Hobby Company and, you know, the others. But I get much better support from the much bigger company, which isn't the way you thought it might be. It's certainly not the way I thought it would be myself. Again, apologies if you're hearing the rain. Let me know if you can hear the rain, because it's absolutely chucking it down here. So I'd be interested to know if you guys can hear it, because I certainly can. Okay. Hollywood movies, ick. In my opinion, Hollywood is run by money, not creativity. Hence, we get remakes because they made money the first time. That is something. So again, some of the things that will change in coming months. So I have a second channel called the Gen X Guy. I've made one video on it so far, so don't rush off. I just put my top 20 sci-fi movies. I'll be doing that a lot more as well. And that's one of the things I want to be talking about, is some of the stuff like the lack of creativity. One, I think it was a Disney rep that called it exactly what it is, right? Franchise mining is how they referred to it. Now, mining is not something that should really be a good simile or analogy for a creative hobby, right? Whether that is Hollywood or modeling, right? You shouldn't. Franchise mining just sums up all the worst parts of what film, some filmmaking has become. So it's yeah. I think you only have to look at the most recent Captain America film to kind of see that, which is absolute hot mess. I haven't heard anybody who's seen it that said it's good so far. In fact, I think it was either on this stream 2 weeks ago or on Scale Modeling Live. Somebody said they'd seen it and it was utter garbage, which we knew, right? However, there are some shows, Reacher, I think, is one of them, which are pretty good. There are ones that do come up. And generally, if you look at them, they are true to their source material. Looking at you, Rings of Power, as an example of something that isn't, and is franchise mining. But generally, yeah, they are ones that are true to source material. They focus on story. And if they're true to source material, generally source material authors have to be good at progression and story development and all the rest, because they don't have flashy CGI in books. I think The Witcher is a good example of this. Witcher season 1 was great. They followed the source material. And I think it's also endemic of like what's wrong with a lot of production today is because the producer, director on that said they wouldn't change. They would remain true to source material. What did they do in season 2? They completely departed from it. And guess what? It turned shit. So, yeah. Watched Top Gun last Christmas, the latest Top Gun. It was watchable. Yeah. I think the thing is with Top Gun Maverick, right, is I went to see it at the cinema. I would say it was a good 7. It's a good, solid, throwaway, don't have to engage brain action film, which at the time we were sorely lacking, right? And that is, I think, why it did so well. It was a big name actor. It was a solid film, not great, but it wasn't terrible at a time when good was great, right? Because what else was out there? Look at the time, there really wasn't, anything to compare it to. So yeah. Yeah, no, I mentioned that before, Moss, DPD. That's the reason I haven't chosen it as a business, is because it is expensive. Yeah, and it's a risk, right? Because you don't know as a business what the experience is going to be like as a business until you go down it. And do you want to pay extra and then find out that was just wasted? So it is difficult. Yeah, CGI is another issue. CGI used to support the story, good. But when it's taking over the story, yeah. And I think a really good example of that, actually, and a good film, did really well, Oscar nominated, is Godzilla -1, right? It had a small budget for a big film, like 55 million, I think it was, around that. It had good CGI, amazing CGI for the money. But the CGI wasn't the point. Godzilla really, although it's a Godzilla film, it was really about one guy, and his development, and it was his character arc and all the supporting parts of that, his relationships, that were the most important part of that. It was a relationship, character arc driven story, which also featured a massive monster in it, But Godzilla was kind of in the background. It was a secondary figure in his own film. It was a supporting role rather than the main one. It was about him, but the story wasn't, if that makes sense. So if you haven't seen Godzilla -1, I would recommend it. For one thing, it's got some really good World War II Japanese stuff in it, which looks cool. And it's just really good story. You know, it's a good film. It's a better film than Top Gun 2, which I enjoyed as well. You know, so, but the CGI supported, exactly as Julian said, that the CGI supported the film rather than it being about CGI. And I think the classic example of that, and also this doesn't bear on success, and I know we're not talking about models here, but models do kind of come into it, because there's a difference about a physical effect and a computer generated effect that somehow as humans we're good at spotting, right? And a physical effect usually looks better. In films that use physical effects, you know, I tend to find better visually than a lot of CGI stuff. I think a classic example of that, of a very successful film, which is basically garbage, is Avatar. Avatar, it was all about the CGI because the story is crap. It's the most simple, obvious, see-through story you could get. You know, it was really James Cameron showing off what he could do CGI wise, you know. And so was Avatar 2. They were both box office successes. But I wonder how many people, normal people, not like, you know, solid fans, like I mean this of any franchise, but just normal, you know, everyday people go and rewatch Avatar, right? I don't think it's that many. There's not a lot of rewatchability in Avatar, I don't think. Certainly for me. So, you know. It says, I asked my postman, did I have any mail today? He said no. Looked in post box 10 minutes later, and you put the wrong letters for another address in. Oh well. Hey David, good to see you. You should get your Licensor imminently, depending on the Royal Mail, depending on what their 24-hour service tracks like. If you haven't had it already. Oh, no parcel due, by the way, yet. No. Okay. So I'm going to guess tomorrow with, I'll say 65% chance tomorrow, 35% Friday. No, 30% Friday, 5% Saturday. There we go. That's my guess. So I was talking earlier, David, about Royal Mail and delays, and we've spoken quite a lot about that tonight. So I won't dwell on it. But if you need a tracking number, if it doesn't turn up tomorrow, drop us a line. I'll give you a tracking number, and you can see its progress wherever it is. Easy, brother. That's an interesting name. Thank you very much. So that is, I guess, another thing. It's great how you guys keep segueing me back to modeling, keeping me on the straight and narrow. That's always good to see. Thank you. So Man's model method is under progress. That's the other thing that will be obviously progressing now that I've managed to get reset up and everything. Is the second video. So the second video is actually going to be a series of, I think it's 5 kind of parallel videos. So if you watch one of them, you know, whichever one, like I've got a World War II aircraft, a Cold War aircraft, military vehicle, car, and ship. So those are the 5, which I mentioned in the first video. So if you watch one of those, you know, the one that you're interested in, the other, I'd love you to watch all of them, but it's not necessary because they all say the same thing, just particular to the kind of subject. So the car one will be slightly different because obviously I'm using the spray paint for the main body there. The others, there'll be some small differences depending on whether I'm using the included paints mainly or the purchase paints, the ICM paints that I'm going to be using. but those are going to be coming out, as I say. I won't put them all out together because I think that would be just a glut and kind of you wouldn't kind of really know where that was. So I'll put them out sequentially. So the first one will be the Spitfire. That's kind of the base, if you like, of the second video. So basically it's going to be 2A, B, C, D, and E. And then 3 will then pick up from the end of all of those into the next parts. But that obviously will be happening over the next month, let's say. I'll put everything in terms of months at the moment. Should get faster as I go on and get more established, obviously. But yeah, no, thank you for your kind words, Easy. And yeah, the new series, the beginners series. I don't want to call it beginners series because it's not. It's a series from beginning onwards on how I do models and an introduction into my way of modeling, which isn't the way, it's a way. It's just the way I've kind of evolved and I've ended up, and hopefully can avoid people making some mistakes I made. It's not going to stop you making all mistakes, and making some mistakes is important because that's how we learn as humans. But those are going to be one of the main focuses that I'm concentrating on over the next couple of weeks. Yeah, exactly, Nick. That's what I found as well. I think if you, and especially I think this works in smaller places, maybe not so much in big ones, but maybe big ones have better systems. But I think if you know your local people and it's the same people, you get that relationship. I think anything where you can get a human interaction rather than interacting with a system, you know, is a good thing. Thank you, Craig. The Discord link is expired. I'll refresh that in this case after this stream, so that you can just go on it. Oh, and Little Things Junkie. It's business we run from home. 70% domestic sales, 30% international. Average 20 items per day. Well, that's a fair rate through though. 20 items a day. So Amazon, I believe, Julian, has its own drivers. So if you're an Amazon delivery person, you're an Amazon delivery person. I don't think they use anybody else because they want to keep all the profits themselves. And Amazon I think, has been heavily criticized for how it puts pressure on its drivers. But if anybody's any direct experience of that, I don't. Do let us know. Yeah, I think that is probably a good shout, Gary. All the super hubs they've built. And I don't think in little old Somerset, as I've now transitioned from Dorset to Somerset. So in the last 5 years, I've lived in Wiltshire, Dorset, Somerset, and haven't moved more than 20 miles. But yeah, I think the idea of having like big super hubs works once they're up and running and the process is done. But the problem is you've got to get to that point. And I'm sure, having been in businesses, right, which have big systems and interfacing with other systems, it's that interfacing which is the important part. And that's usually where things go wrong, is the interfacing. Interfaces are so important in many things. But I think that's probably the issue, right? Because if something isn't transferred into a super hub correctly, how does it get out? So I think that's the problem. How many times I think we all probably have either direct experience or second-hand experience of somebody we know who has experienced a problem with luggage flying, right? I've had stuff go missing. The first time I went to the US, one of my bags didn't come through. So I was just like, what do I do? And I was pretty young at the time, so it's like not exactly experienced in this. Fortunately, like it was delivered to the hotel, the Marriott Residence in Santa Clara. I think like the next night, or even it was the next night. So at least I had clothes and stuff. But I mean, I've been traveling with colleagues who the bags are just gone. I actually traveled once with we had an engineer at a company, the first company I worked for, who obviously he used to travel with engineering components. Sometimes he sometimes put them in his personal luggage. And once he had one of his suitcases detained because of some of these pieces, and they couldn't get a hold of him, and they blew it up. It was destroyed in a controlled explosion. Which we thought was hilarious, of course, at the company. It wasn't, and for him, a nightmare. But yeah, again, you know, anything going into these big systems, it's fine if everything works fine. If not, how do they get out? You know, and sometimes they do, other times they don't. You know, they just languish there, and they end up in lost luggage or whatever the equivalent is for post. And then ultimately, often, they get either sold. I think it's like Amazon. You know, Amazon mystery boxes and stuff are often stuff which gets stuck in their systems or returned, and they just sell them. They just like palletize them and then just sell them, often to third parties who then resell them and stuff. But yeah, we shouldn't really have a whole industry which relies on the incompetence of another industry. But hey. Oh, good. I'm glad you guys couldn't hear any rain, because it was belting down. It felt really loud here. So sounds like Games Workshop look after your pennies, the small outlets, whereas airfix look after the pounds, the big companies like Jadlam, etc. Yeah, sadly, I think that is the case. Yeah, I don't want to rag on airfix, and they have been making changes. I don't think Hornby is making as many of those changes. So I have, obviously the rep that I used to deal with is no longer at Hornby, and I have a guy now who I think covers a bigger area, bigger territory, and I think it kind of shows. Yeah, it's I'll hold judgment, but my initial impressions over the last 6 months or so, yeah, which is a shame, but we'll see. Watch this space. Certainly. Well, no, actually, I will elaborate. So I ordered, when I started the Man's Model Methods first video, I knew what I was going to be doing, right? So I ordered a whole bunch of starter kits so that I could have them in stock when the video came out, so people wanted to follow along, they could buy them. airfix didn't deliver them because a whole lot of them were out of stock, despite them being on the list anyway. And then I had a delivery, and I thought, great, I got them. And then a load of them weren't there. Most of them actually weren't there. And then they languished around for a bit. And then I got my available to ship notification. Yeah, these are all available now. But they were then under their minimum order threshold. Not by a huge amount, but they were under. And it's like, okay, so I have to order more stuff just to receive the stuff that I've ordered before. It's like, what? You know, but they ship the Licensor separately. And it's like, guys, just sort this out. It's like you shouldn't have to pay more to receive stuff that you ordered 6 weeks ago or 2 months ago. You know, it's the experience, again, as a retailer, in terms of that support from airfix is not good. It's still not good. Sorry, but oh, Day of the Jackal. Love the Day of the Jackal. Severance, the Silo, Yellow Jackets from Invincible, all great current shows. Oh, is that current Day of the Jackal? I thought you meant the, was it 1960s film? You have to do a lot to beat that for me. Oh, but is last Mission Impossible movie? I've not seen the last Mission Impossible movie. Napoleon was a really crappy movie, and they filmed most of it over here. The old one was awesome. You see, I saw the trailer for Napoleon. I thought, oh, that actually, you know, Joaquin Phoenix, Napoleon, that looks all right. And then everybody said it was garbage. I'm like, oh, that's a shame. I was pretty bored in Avatar. It was okay, but not rewatchable. Agreed. Yeah. I mean, at the time, again, if you think about when it was released and the CGI it showcased, it was about the CGI. And I can tell you, I watched it not long after it came out, and I thought it was utter crap. And you know why? Because I watched it on a screen about that big in the back of a headset in a plane. So I didn't get any of the CGI spectacle. It was just the story, really, because I was watching it on a plane. Because what else are you going to do on a 8-hour plane trip? And I watched it, and I just this is why is everybody raving about this? It's rubbish. But if you watch on, if you went to this, I'm sure if you went to the cinema and saw that, it would be like, wow, you know, like a 1977 Star Wars experience. It's just like, this is amazing, you know. The difference is that Star Wars also had a story, even if it was a fairly simple one, you know, it worked. But anyway. Comment. You guys in the UK sound like you have the most inept postal employees. Well, we can neither confirm nor deny that, Mike. I mean, I've heard of USPS being, you know, pretty ragged on by Americans. So I can't, you know, I don't want to sound like we're too bad. Having said that, John Alex sent me some cash through international post, which of course you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to. They always say don't send cash. It arrived without any issue, and I don't believe it cost him very much at all. And I believe that was USPS. So, you know, can't really diss it when my personal experience of delivery has been pretty good. So, anyway. Name, it's an old gaming name. I do tend to change eventually. No problem, Greg. Right. So I should have said this an hour and a half ago. But for anybody who's new to the stream, if you do have a question, I use Moss's borrowed from airfix and chill about if you've got a question or a comment, if you put question or comment in big capital letters or QQQ in capitals, it just helps me pick it out in the chat. As this is a fairly informal, not really focused on a subject chat today, I'm mainly going through the chat, so it's not so important tonight, but generally it allows me to pick out the more important, like dedicated at me kind of questions more easily. So I paid for a next day delivery once. It took 5 days. They blamed a traffic delay. No idea what was delivering it to us. That's a fairly significant traffic delay to take 5 days, isn't it? I mean, considering that I once drove from the UK to the south of France in 1 day, which is like a 1,000-mile journey. Yeah, 5 days for a traffic delay is, yeah. That was an exceptional drive. You know, it wasn't. I've done I've done the south of France twice. Once in a single day, which was too much, I can tell you. And I generally used to do it in 2 days. Used to break it up and stay over at a place halfway or so. Luggage auctions are a real thing. Indeed. Sadly, they are. As much as you rang on airfix, it astounds me since you are in country, and it sounds like they treat North America. Well, I don't think so, Aries. I think a lot of North American customers find big delays with airfix shipments. I think it really depends on where in the US you are and what you're actually ordering. So I think if you spoke to small retail outlets in the US, if indeed you have such a thing as a small retail outlet in the US, which is kind of where I'm coming from, not the direct customer. I think direct customer is much better for airfix in the UK. But yeah, I don't know. Your mileage may vary. I can only speak about my own personal experience, and I'm sure others, will give similar for them. Can't wait for March the 1st on Netflix. Halo is coming. Yeah, they're resurrecting Halo, isn't there? So not quite sure what that will look like, but we will see. Avatar is just Pocahontas. Yeah, pretty much. And the thing is, there is nothing wrong with retelling an already told story that works in a different way. Game of Thrones is just the War of the Roses, right? That's what it is. Which then it's even more astonishing that George R.R. Martin hasn't got off his fat ass and finished it. And apologies for the comment, but Jesus, come on! I mean, the guy's rolling in money, and he can't even take the time to finish something he should have finished 5 years ago. Well, more than 5 years ago. How long is it now since Game of Thrones finished? Since they botched the ending of it? Anywho, let me get over that. Yeah, I get you on that one. Didn't hold a candle to the original. Oh, Little Things Junkie. Here we go. Pulling me back to and yes, noted now. Thank you. Do you remember the first kit you built? That's a good question. I do not, because it was a long time, not because it was a long time ago, but because I was very young, too young, really, especially by today's standards. So we moved out of the first house that I remember, which we moved into when I was a baby, so before even memory formed. But we were in that house until I was 8, right? And I have memories, pretty early memories, of making models with my dad in that house when I was probably 5 or 6. So what they were, I can remember some of them, but I can't tell you which one was the first. I remember the MiG-21 Cessna dogfight double from Airfix. They were almost exclusively Airfix, I can tell you that. I remember more of the stuff my dad made because he had some really interesting things that I wasn't allowed to touch. One of which was like I don't know who made it. I could find out, obviously, but it was a 1-to-1 scale, like musket. and I'm sure it was like a Berber musket or something. You know, it was like from like somewhere in the Middle East, I think it was supposed to represent, because it was huge long box that was behind the sofa, because it was the only place that it would go. So if anybody wants to get on Scale Mates and find out what that was, whilst we're in chat, that would be an interesting one. And you know, you get a lot, you take a lot from your parents, you know, when you're little. But back then, my dad always used to rag on Revell as being bad kits, you know, flash, mismolded parts and stuff. And it's amazing that, you know, I grew up with that belief, and it was borne out by my experience all the way up until the 90s. And it wasn't until the 90s that Revell really changed their business. And then they went through that period from the early 90s, let's say 1990, to about 2010, maybe a little bit more, where they made some good stuff. And then they went back into producing old shit again. So lapsed back into old ways. And the new stuff they're making now, in the past couple of years, has been okay, but it hasn't been the same standard as like Airfix's rebirth, if you like. Going a little bit off the topic of my first ever kit, but yeah, the earliest ones I remember were all Airfix kits, and they were all ones that were bought at the local newsagent. You know, I don't think we had a dedicated model shop that I visited with my dad back then. But yeah, it was when I was like 5 or 6. That's when I started modeling. One of the things I do remember very clearly is cutting myself in the thumb with one of those disposable red or orange handled Stanley knives. That's what my dad used. I think he had them for work because he was a plumber, so he used to use them for, I don't know, stripping wires and flux and things. And I remember stabbing myself in the thumb with one of those. You know, negative experiences, very impactful. So I've stabbed myself many times since. So I'm not sure I learned my lesson truly, but yeah. You're absolutely right, Julian. The Hobbit is another film where they tried to ride on the popularity of Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I don't know why Jackson even wanted to do 2 films. It's, if you look at this size, just take The Hobbit, right, and then take Lord of the Rings, printed in the same font size and put them side by side. The Hobbit is really an extended short story. It's not really a whole proper novel. The Lord of the Rings is, it took me 3 attempts to get through the Lord of the Rings. I stumbled at the beginning a lot. And then once I got into it, I read the whole thing. But it's 3 books, right? 3 fairly dense novels, obviously all linked into that series. So yeah, The Hobbit was 1 film. It should have been 1 film. It would have been one good film, and they made 3 crap films, really. Yeah, I watched them all. I've never watched them since. I watched The Lord of the Rings countless times. It's Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. Did take some liberties. I mean, Christopher Tolkien, I don't think liked it. But I think he was one of the few, because it's popular reception, obviously, and the inspiration it gave to people. I think it's true to the spirit of a lot of it. I mean, the bits that were cut weren't, in general, truly impactful. For the, you know, there were things that could be cut. You know, Tom Bombadil, for instance, a lesson that Rings of Power did not learn. You know. Anyway. Greg, I hope to start my first model at the weekend, as long as I can fit bathroom door handle lock. Measurement BF109G6 Airfix. Can't wait to get started, to be honest. It's a nice kit, and you hopefully, fingers crossed, should enjoy it. Okay, Let me have a little look and I'm going to scroll down a little bit to try and pick up questions, because I'm aware we are kind of in the last 20 minutes. Somehow I've been wittering on for an hour and a half. Question, Alex, will you continue your Gen X channel? I only saw your introduction post a while ago now. Yes, so I mentioned this however long ago it was that I talked about this in the stream. So, yep, Gen XG will continue. I will be doing more of that. As I say, it just really, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Wow, that was one of those really sudden ones. No build up, just like this is going to happen. So yeah, I started it. Another one. Something just got me, obviously. So yeah, I started a channel when I thought I was going to have more time than I did, and then obviously the whole house thing happened and stuff. So I started at the wrong time. Really, I should have waited, but I kind of wanted to get it out there because it was obviously something I felt I wanted to do, and if I didn't, it would kind of languish. So, but yes, I will be, and hopefully more of that coming in the next. I'm going to say the next month. I think I need to get my backlog here. I want to focus. Main focus is going to always be Man's Model Moments. That is, if you like, my passion project. GXG is more of a sideline, but also should be once I get into the flow of it. The first one was not easy. I was going to say it's easy to make and produce. The first one wasn't. It was an absolute bloody nightmare. It took a long time. Mainly just it's also copyright stuff and those whole things. Even though that's not monetized at all. But yeah, the absolute intent is to develop GXG further, for sure. People mentioning their first kits. Some interesting. Oh yes, the Gloucester Gladiator in hideous red and white plastic. So I remember doing quite a lot of Matchbox kits. I think that was really a little bit later, like when I was getting like in I call it the new house, after I was 8. So that's when I was doing more of the Matchbox things, and the 2 and 3 color kits that they used as an actual highlight on the box. I remember some yellow and brown. I think that might have been a Licensor, actually, yellow and brown. There was brown and I think tan color, and I think maybe black as well for the Wellesley. I can never say that one. You know which one I'm talking about. Yeah, they had some really weird color combinations. Matchbox. I mean, it was the 70s. Why not? Good to see you, Steve. I am indeed very well, and shop is indeed improving. Well, thank you. I hope I deserve success. Success would be nice. Oh, the rain, it starts again. Good God. You can certainly tell we are still in winter coming into spring. Just scrolling down a little bit again, just trying to find any questions, and then I am up to date. Excellent. So we've got airfix 109 made with Julian's mum. Submarine painted red in household paint and put it for the fire to dry. Excellent. The conning tower drooping to one side. Excellent. I think a lot of these things, right, you either at the time you think they're a disaster and they like a horrible, which makes you remember them, or you can look back on and think, God. See, I remember one of my first memories of making kits is actually a problem with painting. So if you remember the old kits, especially the frog ones, had the painting instructions. So I remember doing frog kits mainly from the instructions, because they had all those little diagrams, and they showed you painting a pilot and snipping off the end of a paintbrush to do stippling and stuff. Techniques which were far beyond the 6-year-old. But I remember painting the pilots and stuff. And of course, that was enamel paint back then. And I remember the paint mixing with the still wet cement oozing from the seams. So, yeah. First kit was an airfix Spitfire Mark 9. Good old JEJ. Excellent. Emma, hopefully you saw my message regarding the refueling set, etc. And Emma actually asked me a question, which I thought was a really good one, about airbrushing in the cold. And actually quite a good one to go over for everybody about what are tips and tricks to airbrushing or spraying in general, actually, in the cold. Because if you can hear the rain coming down, either here in the stream or at your own place, this time of year for most of us, excluding you Antipodean people down in Oz and New Zealand, it's winter, right? It's cold in the majority of people watching the channel right now, hemisphere. And unless you've got a dedicated space inside with extraction, spraying is generally done in your man cave outside, in the garage, in the shed, something, most of which are unheated. And then it comes to the point of, well, how do you spray when it's cold? Because that's not ideal conditions, right? Now, the main trick to this is making sure everything isn't cold, which kind of sounds obvious, but if your airbrush, your subject, your paint is all warm, so basically, if that take all of that inside, warm it up, room temperature, you don't have to like put it in boiling water or anything. But if that's all warm, your paint is warm, the subject is warm, the actual time, and then you take it out into wherever you're going to spray it, you spray it, and then bring it back in. The model, at least, what's been sprayed. The other stuff doesn't really matter. Unless you're going to do more spraying, in which case you don't want to like let it cool down again and then have to do it all again. But as long as your subject and the paint is warm, you shouldn't have any issues. We shouldn't, or at least you'll minimize any issues. Now, of course, if it's freezing temperatures, then it's more about the humidity in the air, and because your compressor obviously is going to draw in air, it compresses it. That actually does warm it. But if you're compressing air which has a lot of water in it, you can get peripheral issues. That's not directly related to the cold. It's kind of tangential. But for instance, you can spray cars, and if you look on YouTube about spraying in the cold, you will get channels which are dedicated to spraying cars, even with 2K in the cold. And it's possible. Again, you just need to make sure your paint, your equipment, what you're spraying is warm, and that will basically take out 99% of your issues, and you should be okay. And that includes with rattle cans. So I've sprayed rattle cans. If your rattle can is warm, and I think Moss has mentioned this as well on airfix and chill, if you put that in warm water, if you've got a cold can, put it in warm, not hot water, just warm water, like tepid, kind of warm to the hand, 30 degrees or so. Warm that up. Make sure it's well shaken, so it's like evenly distributed and stuff. You'll be okay. And I've sprayed in wet, not raining, obviously, but like damp, let's call it damp, cold conditions with spray cans, with rattle cans, and had no issues with the finish. It really is about, don't have if I'm going to spray this, I don't want this to be cold. And I don't want the paint that I'm going to be spraying with. I'm not going to spray it blue, by the way. I just picked up a random. Here we go. Let's take a dark color instead. Something a bit more, perhaps not black. Let me find have I got German grey? There we go. German grey, the correct color for spraying it. There we go. If this is warm, your airbrush is warm, so it's not going to just cool down in the airbrush, because the airbrush obviously has a latent heat capacity. You'll be pretty okay 9 times out of 10. Now, obviously, the ideal is you spray in a nice warm environment as well. Not too warm and dry, because that can cause other problems. You don't want stuff drying before it actually hits the model. But that should be most of it, right? And there are some. Look at YouTube, search for spraying in the cold. You'll see people putting it. I didn't see many model ones, but you'll see like car channels and stuff talking about that. So okay, no problem at all. Dave, you are a gentleman and a scholar. Dave has kindly gifted 5 Men's Model Moments memberships. He regularly does this on not just my channel, but others as well. He's a stalwart of the community. Thank you, sir. And if you have had a gifted membership, for instance, Phil, it was World War II scale models, Dave. So I will update the community post with the Discord link after this. So if you check that later on tonight, don't do it straight after the stream, because it will take a little while for me to actually do that. But I will update that, and then you can join the private members Discord. The private members Discord is the easiest way to contact me for anything, because I use Discord a lot, and it's immediate. So there's various sections in there you can see and go from there. So thank you very much, Dave. And we are coming to the 2-hour mark. So if you have any other questions or comments before we finish off, I've got time to answer 1, possibly 2, depending on how easy the questions are. You know me, I never give a direct answer. It always takes me a little way around the houses. Darkstar Project says the first kit was the Airfix 172nd Saab Draken. Never painted them, just tore the parts off the sprue. I wonder how it's tricky fit issues. Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, those very first builds I did, we didn't use nippers. I used that disposable Stanley knife. That was it. We cut my, no wonder cut my thumb, right? I mean, my dad, being a plumber, his hands were very, hardened over time. So my little hands holding his, they felt rough. It's like his skin was armored like a rhino. So he seemed to be immune to these things, whereas my little 5-year-old hands were very prone to being cut by, admittedly, a probably fairly dull Stanley knife at the time. Craig says it's been good background listening tonight. I have been pottering around doing odds and sods. Hopefully on the Yamato, Craig. We want to see that on Friday. So still have the Stanley knife, but now use it for scraping. I don't know, did anybody else use those red handle disposable Stanley knives? I always used to think they were Airfix ones. In your mind you have these things from childhood, which when you grow up you realize that was actually not true at all. I always thought they were Airfix. I think it was may have even been on it on the first airfix and chills I was on. I was trying to find them, or it was for a video maybe. And I looked them up. It's like airfix, like disposable blades, or like, you know, I looked at all these, and I found it as an image, and it was by all these Stanley ones. And I thought, oh my god, they were just work blades. They were, you know, never a modeling thing. It was just obviously one my dad had, you know. So yeah, interesting. You're correct again, good sir. Good to see it. So if those of you who don't know of Scale Model Inc. live on a Friday night, head over to John Alec Scale Modeling's channel. So this good chap, he hosts a bunch of us delinquents who chat about occasionally some model related things. Occasionally some of us will poke about at plastic or photo etch. And it's a little bit more loose, I would say, than tonight. Usually more beer involved, or alcohol of other things. A lot more swearing. So, so nail clippers actually aren't that bad an idea. In fact, I think in the Beyond the Box episode where me and Moss discussed starter toolkits, I actually came up with, like, we both came up with cheap ways to create our own toolkit, and one of mine was to use basically it was a manicure set which had nail files and a fairly passable nail clipper set, not the press down types. They look like little nippers. They're sharp enough. You know, they're used for cutting nail, which is pretty hard, comparable to plastic. So actually, it's not that stupid or like unreasonable, Ian, to be honest. Yep, that was also I've done that in the past as well, Emma. Wiggled bits off the spoon, just stressing it until it gives, and then the nail file. Yep. So final one for the evening. Brian, question. I really enjoy your series on mixing paints. Is there any chance you could tell me how to mix a good RAF dark earth using Tamiya paints, please? Yes. So I will be doing the same that I've done for the ICM paints. I will also be doing for Tamiya paints. Now, in fact, this is a good segue into me showing you the current version of the mixer. Here we go. Just check. Right, so this is the current version of the paint mixer. Okay, let me just go here. So here you can see I've got Tamiya acrylics now as the paint set. The volume ratio is, at the moment, we've only got up to XF60, so not the extended range, and we don't have the gloss paints in here either. But if I go to British Aviation Colours of World War II, Dark Earth, that was the Dark Earth, wasn't it? Yeah. And let me just make this a little smaller so I can actually get it on my screen. And I go calculate paint mix. It'll chug away. Oh, actually, I don't want that to be so high. Let's try and limit it a little bit. Okay. So here we go. 1 part XF03, flat yellow, 2 parts XF10, flat brown, and 1 part XF23, light blue. Gets you, that's a very reasonable DE of 0.39. So if you Oh, sorry. There we go. Didn't realize you guys still had the comment on screen. So here you can see I put a maximum of 5 parts. So we have 1 part XF03, 2 parts XF10, 1 part XF23. I've asked it to aim to get to 0.5 DE. So anything 1 or below is basically the same color. 0.5 just really nails it down. You can see we're up at 0.39. That is the RGB equivalence, which is only a rough kind of thing. And there's our reflectance curve, which is pretty close. So the mixer, obviously, we've got a whole bunch of different paints that we can use. You can't mix between the paints. There are various reasons for that. I won't go into it. And we've also got a whole bunch of different targets. We also have some nice features now. So we can actually put a manual LAB entry in. So if I scan something and say it's got a lightness of 65, an A value of 0.2, and a B value of, I don't know, what do we want? 13.7, say. I can set that as a target. So I've scanned this color, and then we can calculate the paint mix to that. There we go. Boom. Done. And if like, oh, I've done that in Tamiya. No, I don't want that. I'm actually going to use Liquitex basic acrylic fluids. I'll talk about Liquitex paints in the future, I'm sure. I can do the same thing using a different paint set, and boom, there we go. That's it in that. Okay, D of 1.25. I'm not too happy with that. I can increase the search depth. It'll give me a little bit more thinking power behind it. It'll take a little bit longer. There we go. It's got a little bit of a better mix. Maybe I want it to, okay, we can go to 7 parts. You know, I don't mind mixing it a little bit more. See if we can come up with something a little bit better. Now we got to 0.46. So I'm really happy with the way the paint mixer is developing at the moment. I'm really looking forward to getting that out. Not sure what format it'll be in, probably on Windows to start with, maybe on Mac afterwards. I think getting onto a phone at the moment is going to be a challenge because of the processing power required, but we'll see. We'll see. So anyway, so nice one to end on. Just being able to actually answer somebody's question, give them something concrete, and close the stream out on that. So just mix the dark earth using ratios. It looks great. That's good to know, Dark Star, that it's not a one-off by me. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in tonight and joining me for my various ramblings on what has been happening and what is happening right now, and what you can expect from the channel and the shop in the coming days and weeks. I've only been at the shop this week with the reopen bit. I say there will be a video on that hopefully tomorrow, but I'm really enjoying it and really looking forward to being there, you know, basically full time and being able to support my customers and also my viewers in getting more content out as well. So anyway, thank you all. I hope you have a very pleasant rest of your week, and hopefully you'll join us on Friday night at Scale Modeling Live. Have a good one. Don't get all the colds and things out there. I've had one and it's not pleasant. So keep warm, keep well, and see you soon. Cheers, guys.